What is something uniquely middle class, that neither the poor nor rich experience? Budgeting for holidays. The rich don't need to, and the poor can't afford holidays. Budgeting both the money and the time. My in-laws are wealthy and always want the whole family to go on random trips. Every time they seem shocked that we can't just drop everything and go. I think eating leftovers the next day or making casseroles is middle class. I have been in the poor category and we did not have anything left over to eat the next day and we never had a casserole. In the middle class, I have access to recipes and more money to combine foods. Probably stressing about home ownership and mortgages. The rich probably already have multiple homes and it's already beyond attainment for the poor. That or stressing and budgeting and debating about doing major repairs upgrades to the house. Rich just pay for it, poor have little to no chance of encountering that obstacle. I think the stress of homeownership is universal, but the perspective is not. I worked in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, off of the New Jersey boardwalk. About every third or so person I assisted early on was trying to get government assistance for their second or third vacation home. And they would get so upset that they didn't qualify for emergency hotel costs until I explained that they could just go to their other home and wait for insurance. For other people, they didn't have another home to go to. Paying proportionally the most taxes while also receiving the least benefits and subsidies. Having a two-car garage that's so full of random shit that you can only get one car in it. The garage fridge. The old one your parents didn't want to throw away because it still kind of works but not good enough to be the one for daily use. Making choices on what to buy at Scholastic's book fair. Mowing the yard. Well off enough to have a home and a yard, in a neighborhood where a decent yard is expected, maybe even mandated by an HOA. But not well off enough to be able to afford to pay someone else to do it. Saving for retirement. Health insurance to a certain extent. Massive college debt. The rich just pay for it and the poor typically qualify for way more financial assistance. Of course, there are other debts associated with college, but if you have lower middle-income parents who don't want to pay a dime for college, you are pretty fucked. I'd also include kids of rich people who don't want to help with college but are more likely to have other relatives who might help. Costco runs? Samples, a full cart, the food court. I'm guessing rich people don't hang out here, but I don't know. Most rich people I know love Costco. The joy of finding a bargain is fairly universal, regardless of social class. My sister's best friend growing up came from one of the wealthier families in the US, and one of his mom's favorite activities was to go to TJ Maxx with my mom and hunt for bargains. Delayed gratification. Long road trips by car. The rich fly and the poor can't afford to go anywhere. Don't the middle class fly too? The middle class definitely flies. They just fly coach. Poor people fly too. Have you ever been on Spirit? Healthcare tourism, traveling to another country for dental work or surgery. Rich don't need to, poor cannot afford to. This isn't really true though. Medical tourism to the US by the super rich is very much a thing, as high-end medical care in the US is miles ahead of most other countries. I had dinner just last night with an oral surgeon who caters to high-net-wealth individuals, and she said that probably half her patients are high-net-wealth individuals from Europe or the Middle East who fly into her for treatment. Tools, the poor can't afford them and the rich pay someone else to fix it. One extra bedroom that serves multiple purposes. It is a guest room or office or home gym or craft room or playroom. In my experience with wealthy families, each of these things has its own room. Financially unstable families are unlikely to have an extra bedroom to spare. Brand new Toyota Camry. Rich folk wouldn't be seen in one, poor folks would buy it used. I think you are mostly right, but I actually know a rich couple who bought a Camry, and then later a Corolla, step below. I worked in tech and know lots of rich people who don't drive luxury cars. A lot of rich people don't want to look rich in public and want at least one everyday driver that is just practical, safe, and low maintenance. The top of the line of a non-luxury brand actually gets you most of the features of a luxury car, but cheaper, less hassle for things like repairs, and less of a target for theft. That financial sweet spot where you make $10 a month too much to qualify for assistance but you can't afford health insurance, nor food after you pay rent. Budgeting in general. Making monthly payments on your kids' braces.
What are some of the worst things that happen in Las Vegas? The amount of people living underneath the city in the storm tunnels is pretty mental. There was a well-known adult film actress who ended up living down there. Jenny Lee. I've been trying to leave the casino industry for a year and I can't articulate to potential employers how much I hate that casinos put people into desperate situations. I literally think about the mole people under Vegas and I'm like, the brochures don't work. Video poker, man. When I lived in Vegas, something like 90% of problem gamblers were hooked specifically on that. It's like the crack, heroin, and meth of gambling addiction. Also, it's not just the big casinos. Vegas has all these crummy local bars that tourists never see where people blow a lot more money on video poker than they do on drinks. One single taxi driver with a bad addiction will be enough to cover the bar's rent. Jumper suicides inside the casinos. I came here to say significant financial losses to gambling, but your comment takes it a significant step further. We had a jumper when I was security at Mandalay Bay. He jumped out his room window and landed on top of the valet overhang. Awful. My friend does professional pool and he told me there are groups there that specialize in robbery. They watch for winners and follow them. He won a few $1,000s and later that night a few guys stormed his room, beat him senselessly, and robbed him of his winnings. I am in Las Vegas and on Friday I won an $11,000 jackpot at the link. I requested a check because I don't feel comfortable carrying that much cash. The workers seemed flabbergasted like I was the only person to ever ask for a check. It took forever and they asked me all kinds of weird questions. I have won jackpots before, never this big, and they always count the cash in front of everyone else, which is terrifying. Yes, put a target on my back. This was a million years ago, but a lady my dad worked with and her husband went to Vegas. He somehow won a big jackpot. Later she couldn't find him and he was found dead in a hotel room. I have no idea if they ever solved who killed him or what happened to his jackpot money. Never thought about that, but it would make sense that if you win big, you should immediately start organizing your trip back home. Like book a new flight home while cashing out, tell the hotel to have a car waiting down front, and maybe even pay them to ship your bag back home rather than go up to your room for the few minutes needed to pack up. Human trafficking seems like the obvious answer. Yeah, it's not just the working girls either. I watched a video with a former working girl, and apparently, those people who hand out the cards are oftentimes illegal immigrants getting paid almost nothing or working off cartel debt from being smuggled across the border. The timeshare people. Hotels and casinos have deals with the city, county, and media to keep crimes, murders, and suicides as quiet as possible. Would you stay in that hotel room if you knew some dude killed himself there 2 weeks ago? Vegas will be out of water in less than 10 years. The mob was active in Vegas until the early 90s. They paid the county a dumb amount of money to look away. A lot of that money went to the schools. Vegas was one of the best districts in the country. The mob guys got old, died, cashed out, and the corporations moved in and used offshore tax havens to avoid paying despite billions in revenue. Clark County schools are garbage and yet idiots keep going there. If you have a family and move to Vegas for anything other than a military requirement, you suck at parenting. Gambling. It ruins lives. I'm not saying it shouldn't be legal, but it should be acknowledged as the harm it is. I didn't realize how bad it was until I went to a casino alone to play while I was sober. People crying and begging for their money back from dealers. I watched a guy working a high-stakes slot for $100 a pull. He would pull the lever, jump back about 2 feet, and stand frozen watching the reels land. Slump his shoulders and fall in on himself, then trudge up to the machine for another shot. I don't know what he was trying to bail himself out of, but it wasn't going well. The dude in my hotel hallway, outside his room yelling at his girlfriend, sitting in pants filled with turds I could smell from the elevator. Hope you're doing okay, buddy. Las Vegas itself. It is a nightmare from a planning perspective. It draws resources from a large hinterland, and it exists in a location where a city should not have been built. Tech conferences. Fly in 50,000 people for a week to spend company money on steak, booze, and strippers in the evening, and then sit in the giant alien meeting rooms all day in a half-conscious daze while largely untrained people try their hand at public speaking with an audience of a few thousand. What conspiracy theory is so easily disproven that you don't understand how it's still going? Flat Earth. I've truly never understood what the big conspiracy is about this, like who would benefit from lying about the Earth being a globe. I understand most other conspiracies and what the purpose that they would serve, but this one is so moronic it's just beyond me. Like, why do they think we would be lied to about gravity? I think deep down these guys don't even believe it. I think it has less to do with the actual content of the conspiracy and more with feeling like you're uncovering a deep hidden secret, being more aware of the truth than everyone else, and belonging to a community of like-minded individuals. My sister is a flat earther, and what she gets out of it is a sense of superiority. Elvis faked his death. If he was going to do that, wouldn't he have chosen a more dignified way to go? Same with Paul McCartney. There's a conspiracy that he died and was secretly replaced by a lookalike. I don't believe Elvis faked his own death. However, he was a twin. It was quite common during the time period of his birth for them to tell the parents a twin was a stillbirth and then adopt them out for profit. People claim the proof Elvis faked his death is the homeless man who had his DNA come back matching Elvis. Could it be his twin who was supposedly dead? I don't believe the homeless twin theory either, but I had the idea when I kept reading so many stories about how Elvis is alive, homeless, and DNA proves it. Dinosaurs never existed. I have some fundamentalist Christian relatives who believe dinosaur bones were placed in the earth by Satan to confuse us. Because if they weren't in the Bible, they didn't exist. The Bible said nothing about The Price is Right. The Bible said nothing about Reddit. That JFK Jr. didn't die and was going to come out of hiding to be Trump's VP. This one is so wild to me. That of all the politicians or political families to choose from, they go with maybe the most prominent Democratic dynasty in American political history, to help rescue a Republican administration. That the Holocaust was a hoax. Eisenhower demanded they photograph and document it because he knew people would try to deny it happened. While I was touring the camp, I encountered 3 men who had been inmates and by one ruse or another had made their escape. I interviewed them through an interpreter. The visual evidence and the verbal testimony of starvation, cruelty, and bestiality were so overpowering as to leave me a bit sick. In one room, where there were piled up 20 or 30 naked men, killed by starvation, George Patton would not even enter. He said he would get sick if he did so. I made the visit deliberately, in order to be in a position to give first-hand evidence of these things if ever, in the future, there develops a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda. I was always curious as to his foresight of the likelihood of denial at a time when challenging historical evidence was unheard of. Propaganda is as old as man. That's how the Nazis got into power to begin with. Propaganda kept the pharaoh in power in Egypt for thousands of years, generation after generation believing their predecessors, and therefore their own, lies and propaganda to stay in power and hold it over hundreds of thousands of people. They truly believed they were gods among men. Moon landing. The entity with the most at stake for the US successfully landing on the moon was the USSR, which also had the ability to track the spacecraft and refute that it landed. They never said a word. Also, NASA has hundreds of thousands of associates, millions in total over the years. But people think the US government could keep such a secret when Bill Clinton couldn't even hide who he had sex with. Also, 5 different retroreflectors were left at different sites on the moon by the astronauts on the Apollo missions, which can be used to verify that they were there, and are used to make accurate measurements of the distance between the Earth and Moon with lasers. Australia isn't real. Microchips in COVID vaccines. 5G anything. Flat Earth. Here's one: my cousin believes that the COVID-19 vaccine changes your DNA and the vaccinated will become something other than human sometime in 2023. The microchip one boggles my mind. There are hundreds of thousands of people involved in producing, testing, and administering the vaccines. If there are microchips in them, someone could easily find them. And there would have to be tons of them in each dose to make sure at least one got into the patient. And how will the microchip be connecting to the internet? And how is it being powered to communicate with Bill Gates? Today I discovered that there are large groups who believe that 9/11 was CGI and there never really were any planes. Hundreds in an Insta post talking about how fake it looks and it's clearly edited. What's your worst secret that you are holding? Recovering gambling addict, and none of my friends know I have a problem. They haven't caught on that I bail every time they want to go anywhere near a casino. Took my last $500 to a casino and won $12,000. Paid off all my credit card debt and had about $8,000 left over. Lost the entire $8,000 the next day, then took a cash advance on my credit card and lost it too. Driving home that night was the moment I looked in the mirror and said, "What are you doing, bro?" And haven't been back. I literally paid off all my debt and had a sum of money that made me feel really secure and at ease, a great springboard into the future, and gave it all back the next day. Insidious, ugly, and destructive addiction. I was up $300,000 once and didn't take all of it home. Now I'm $1,200,000 in debt. It's just you went to the casino, I went to the stock exchange. I stole a 50-cent mini globe when I was a kid and I told my parents I found it. I was obsessed with globes. My aunt's brother-in-law tried to kiss me when I was 16. My brother was 7 years old and stopped him. He doesn't remember, but I do. My greatest fear is becoming my father. He's selfish, manipulative, narcissistic, and can never admit when he's wrong. Every once in a while I see a flash of him in myself and it eats away at me for days. Same with me and my mom. I see it from time to time in myself, but the fact that I'm aware is at least a little reassuring. The fact that you're willing to be different and are aware when you're not is a much bigger positive than you think. I lied about being chased by a turkey when I was around 4 years old on a school trip to a farm, and they thought it was hilarious. I am now in my 30s and my parents still bring up that story as a funny anecdote from my childhood. They still don't know that it never happened. I have a similar dirty secret. In 5th grade, I got suspended for banging on the mummy display glass during a field trip to a museum and scaring all the kids so bad one wet her pants. Chaos ensued. Parents had to be called. I told everyone I did it on purpose because I hated them all. I lied. I tripped over my shoelaces and fell into the glass. My parents still think I'm an asshole. I'll never come clean to them. I ate an entire chocolate cake. My parents still blame the neighbors 20 years later. Per my recruiter's instruction, I hid my mental health history to get into the military. 2 weeks in, I realized I had made a huge mistake in enlisting, and the military was definitely not for me. I told my staff sergeant about this so that I would be discharged. A person in my family murdered an old lady neighbor for her money. I've tried contacting city cops and the county sheriff's office, but nobody cares. I don't know for sure where the death happened. This person disowned me because they know I know. It's so sad they got away with it. That I hate my best friend's partner. My partner hates my best friend. My best friend doesn't hate my partner, but they are never gonna be friends. It's an awful feeling because it feels like I have my entire life with my partner and then my best friend and her life is on the side, completely separate. We've been friends going on 13 years and it feels so shitty that I have to keep the two most important people to me separate. As an adult, I feel that I wasted my life. I deliberately held myself back in life, out of fear of failure. Now I'm too old to reverse any of it, or reinvent myself for the last time. There's just no time. I was accused of attacking 2 women on a hike many years ago. I was at work, and my boss laughed and told me I looked like a police sketch he saw in the news. He showed it to me and I panicked. It was 100% me. I was on that hike on that day, so it all lined up. I never attack those women. I've never attacked anyone in my life. I have no idea what I did on that hike that scared them so much, but every now and then it eats me alive for a few days. I used to like jogging up that hill, so maybe I ran past them and scared them. That doesn't make sense to me, but maybe. Why did they remember my face so clearly if all I did was run past them and scare them? I dropped the leash on my dog once, and she ran up to a group of people to say hi. I pulled her off and apologized. I may have grazed someone perhaps. That also seems dumb though. The small report attached to my sketch never said anything about my dog. I actually wish the report had more info. It just said I attacked 2 women and nothing else. What the hell did I do? I'm very afraid of other people, so I overcompensate by trying to be as interesting or funny as possible, but I can't tell how well it works. I will be sad but mostly relieved when my parents die. Complicated family history that gets swept under the rug because they are elderly and need my help. It's exhausting.